Heidi Fishbein, welcome to the Star Coach Show.
Thank you, Meg, for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I have been looking forward to spending time with you. One of the things that you do that we're going to be talking about is something that I used to do working with an attention deficit population. I did consistently as a therapist. I actually taught coaches at the very beginning of my transition. I would do some trainings around attention deficit and how that influences people and how we can engage with them. So when we connected, I was super excited about that. But let me tell the audience a little bit about what you're doing. And then I would like you to follow up with sharing a little bit about what lights you up about what you do. Um, so Heidi has spent the past decade being a sought after ADHD and Christian life coach. She's a speaker. She holds a PCC through the ICF and is passionate about empowering women and families to navigate life's challenges that come with attention deficit disorder. As the Assistant Director of Training at the International ADHD Coach Training Center. So, this is a woman who knows what she's doing. She teaches and mentors new coaches worldwide to become great coaches and create thriving, ethical coaching practices. So, Heidi, so excited, so many things in there. And I hope that the audience's ears are perked up like, oh, if you teach this, then I might be able to pick up some tips and tricks. And that's exactly what we want to do at the Star Coach Show. We want every show for the audience to leave with something to think about differently, or a way to expand their lens, expand the way that they engage with others. So with that, let's talk about what led you into the field of coaching, and specifically the attention deficit and Christian coaching.
Yeah, thank you, Meg. And my sorry, my hope is that someone does listen and take away even just something that expands their thinking or how they're designing their coaching practice. So I actually haven't had the opportunity to tell this story before, Meg. So I appreciate you asking. So years ago now, my eldest son had gotten an ADHD diagnosis around the age of 4. I had no idea really what ADHD was. It is in my family, but at that time, I didn't really quite understand it. So, from that diagnosis, I realized I'm going to have to learn how to advocate and support my son because no one else was really doing that. So, I knew I had to step into that role. Very shortly after the diagnosis, I was actually referred to a doctor who actually said, hey, ADHD coaching has been really helpful for people that have an ADHD diagnosis. And of course, like many other coaches, when we first heard about coaching, we're like, what is this thing? So
Mhm.
I signed up with my first ADHD coach. I remember buying 12 sessions. I was 6 sessions in, Meg, and I was like, this is what I was created to do. The supportive nature of it, the non-judgmentalness, the empowerment, the way my coach spoke about ADHD in this way that, like, hey, you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with your son. There's nothing wrong with you. You're brilliant, right? Your son is brilliant. Let's tap into all of that. I knew right away. I was like, this is how I want to support other families and other people, because when you have that diagnosis, I have ADHD myself, and I got that diagnosis from getting my children diagnosed, but it is chaotic, Meg. And I'm sure
Mhm.
you've seen this with the families
Well,
you work with.
and I have a son who was
Yeah.
diagnosed with attention deficit, and not with the hyperactivity, but with the attention deficit. And it's a different way that the brain engages, and if we and people just can't think through it. They can't just get over it. It's not a willpower thing, which
It's
is
not.
what some people kind of, and then you're sort of up against the bias of others who don't understand.
Well, and that's the big piece of it too, is the families and the people around you that aren't experiencing having, challenges and disabilities and different diagnoses, they're looking at your family thinking, why are they doing it that way? Or what's wrong with that family? Right. So it's hard, but when you work with a coach that understands ADHD, it was a game changer for us. So like I said, I had the 12 sessions by 6. I was like, this is the thing that
Sign
I
me
need.
up. Yes.
Sign me up. Where do I sign up? So at that point, I actually researched different training schools, and the program that I'm actually the assistant director at is the one I actually trained at many years ago. And it was interesting because as I started that training, I looked at my husband and I'm like, there's got to be Christian coaching. And he's like, Heidi, I don't think so. I don't know if that's a thing. I'm like, it might be a thing. So I started digging in and researching that a little bit. And lo and behold, it's a thing. And what's funny enough is my church. So I go to a Pentecostal church, and through my church, they have a Christian coach training program that they're affiliated with. So this was all on a Sunday, Meg, and I figured this all out. I convinced my husband, took a little bit of work because he knows how impulsive I am, took a little bit of work, but with that work, I was able to enroll, and I actually started the following Monday. And
Wow.
yeah, so I had done both training programs kind of simultaneously. And it was absolutely amazing to go through my Christian coach training as I was going through the ADHD coach training, because as a Christian, I really wanted to have that filter in which to run the information that I was learning through so that I could help people in my community, in my church community. Because there is a lot of families in our churches that have these diagnoses, as well as autism, sensory processing, a lot of co-occurring conditions, and they're isolated. They don't have the support, and oftentimes they're shy and they're uncomfortable to have these conversations. So one thing I know to be true is I live, breathe, and eat ADHD. Like, this is what I do all day, every day. I teach it. My family has it. So to have these moments and these little glimpses where I get to speak to a family about what they're experiencing with no judgment, right? Like, just with, helping build them up, has been so transformative, even outside of the coaching partnerships I have. Just to be able to have those conversations has been, that's why I do what I do, right? It's the one-on-one coaching. It's the teaching other coaches to go out and make that difference. And it's also these little side conversations that I have the privilege and the honor to have with people that don't get to talk about this every day like I do.
Right.
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 It's amazing.
Love that. And may I just take a moment, and hopefully this doesn't offend, but I am like so impressed that with attention deficit, you did not one, but two training programs simultaneously, because that is, that's something to be commended and applauded. So congratulations. And I'm sure the fact that you were pumped and excited and passionate, that helps us do all sorts of things. But when we have issues with attention, going through two programs that are training us that involve learning and reading and all those things, that could be a challenge. So bless you for that.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate that you said interest. And one thing I know to be true about us with ADHD is we have that interest-based nervous system. If it is boring and we are not interested, even if it's important, we're
Right.
not doing it. Right. So I think you're right. I think it was just that fire and that passion. It's like, this is truly, this is what I'm called to do. Right. And I work a lot, and I know this because everybody tells me around me, but it's so interesting because it's what fuels me. It's what like gives me the energy, is being with people and supporting people in this way. So, and I'm also very organized, Meg. This is one thing that helps me get through, is
Mm-hmm.
all of the systems and the organization that I create for myself. It might not be the conventional way, but it works for
But it
me.
works for you. And that
Yeah.
is so key. Structure is just so key,
Yeah.
whatever that structure is. Love that. So as you ventured into this field of attention deficit coaching, how do you maintain the boundary between coaching and therapy?
So it's interesting. What a great question. And it also even just sparks the kind of piece in my brain about ICF coaching, the professional coaching model, that I highly encourage anyone who's considering becoming a coach that they have that training to learn what we do, because most of the students who start training with us actually have no idea what coaching is.
Right.
Uh,
And I
In a
would say that that's true in the 2 coaching programs that I teach in as well. Yeah. They
yes,
might
they
have an inkling, but it's usually not exactly strict coaching. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And it's very common for the coaches in our program to say, "Okay, Heidi, this is all fine and dandy, but when do I get to tell people what to do? When do I get to tell people what worked for me and what I've done?" And one thing I can say about ADHD life coaching is we teach to the ICF pure model of coaching, right? And I have heard in the coaching community that people with ADHD need us to tell them what to do. They need us to have that guiding. So we need to blend in, when you talk about therapy, blend in consulting and coaching to kind of meet our clients where they are. And I don't personally believe that that is true. Every person is creative, resourceful, and whole, and brilliant, and has their unique strengths and talents and gifts. And when we are patient and when we hold true to our ethical guidelines and the pure coaching model, our ADHD clients, they figure it out just like anybody else, right? The piece is they haven't had that space before. Oftentimes, a lot of people growing up with ADHD have been told, no, that's stupid, that's wrong, you're
Don't do
not,
it that way. Just pay
don't do,
attention. Focus.
right.
Do this. Why
Yes.
can't you be like everybody else?
Right. Look at,
Mhm.
Billy over here doing it this way. Why can't you
Right.
do it that way? So when they
Mhm.
start partnering with a coach, all of a sudden we're holding space and asking them questions and asking them, hey, well, what do you think you could do? Right? Like, what is the craziest thing that you could think of here? They're like, well, aren't you just going to tell me what to do? Because that's what a lot of us are used to. And to be fair, a lot of us are used to getting brownie points for being right and having the
Right.
answers. And in
Right.
coaching, quite the opposite. We don't have to know, right? We really are relying on our client to know that. So I think the difference between and well, not crossing that line into the therapeutic model, number one, is knowing what a therapist does, knowing what a consultant does, knowing how these other roles support people, because there is a time and a place for all of those things. It's
All
just
very important
coaching.
helping conversations. Exactly.
Absolutely. It's just not coaching. And I think one of the key pieces is setting that up from the very beginning with your client. If I'm doing a consultation, and the way I have my onboarding process set up, I have several touch points with someone before I decide, is this a good partnership for both of us? And we're going to be listening for some of those things. Is this person talking a lot about being in the past and having trauma or experience? A lot of people with ADHD, they're coming with trauma. Like, it's in the nature of the work that we do, but it's the role of the coach to know how we move through that. So I always, whenever I'm teaching the coaches, it is not the client's job to stay within the role of coaching. They don't know the difference. It's
Right.
it's our role as a coach to say, hey, my client is talking about a past experience. How do I bring that into a coaching conversation? And if I'm not able to, and my client keeps pulling me back to this thing, then that is, ethically, it's my responsibility to now have that conversation with my client. Hey, I'm noticing that we're going back here a lot. What are you noticing? Right. And then partnering with our clients to see what might be a better option for you right now where you are. It doesn't have any bearing on you as a coach and that you weren't able to do it. Right. It's really that meeting where our clients are. And coaching isn't always the best thing for them in that moment. But yeah, so walking that line is really knowing the differences and then keeping us in the present and the forward, right? No, instead of saying, hey, how did that feel back then? Right? It's, how does that experience impact you here today? What are you noticing now from that thing? Right? So we're really just pulling it into the present.
Love that. So with and it just exudes from you this sort of empathetic and compassionate response that you have for the population that you were, well, probably for human beings as a whole, but it really shines with the work that you do. So how does that empathetic lens influence the way that you're engaging with your
Mm.
clients?
That is my number one core value is just that empathy. And I think it shows up in all of the work that I do and all of the conversations. I always say coaching is not about who we are sitting in front, for me, in front of Zoom, but it's not about when we're just coaching, right? As a coach, we're committed to showing up in all of our interactions, all of our professional interactions in this same way. And it's one of the things I love about training coaches is watching that journey happen where it's, okay, here's the coaching skills, here's the coaching mindset, here's how we show up. And then all of a sudden they're coming to class saying, hey, Heidi, I had this conversation and I used all of these coaching skills and just the way I showed up was different. And I'm just like, yes, because it becomes a part of who you are, right? You don't
Right,
put your coaching hat on and then walk out the door and you're a different person. It
right,
is who you are. And this empathy, I think a part of it comes from raising kids with ADHD, experiencing it myself, watching my children go through the things that they go through, and learning to be a coach and being a coach is such a gift because now as my kids journey that walk that they have, I
hmm
get to be a partner in that in this different way where I'm not, here's the Kleenex box. No, that's not true. Look at all these things that are true. Now I can sit with them and be comfortable in their pain and in their strong emotion, which is, Meg, as a parent, it is hard.
Oh, oh,
It is
it's
hard,
hard. Yeah.
but they need that sometimes,
hmm
right? And I think that our clients need that sometimes too. I'm not here to fix what you're going through,
Right.
right?
And
Who am I?
yeah, who am I to even assume that I can, or to make those statements that sometimes feel knee-jerk reaction for that those rescuing statements. It's going to be okay or everything. We don't know. So how can we sit in the moment and
Yeah.
allow the experience? Because to your point, how often do we get somebody who will create the comfort level of I can sit with you in your pain and be here with you because that's what you need right now. I can't rescue you. I can't fix it. But how healing is it even to be able to express it?
Yeah. Well, and I think there's this driving piece in me that I always just think to myself, who am I to step in the way of someone's path? I don't know if they have to feel that pain to get to the other side. I don't
Mhm,
know if they have to walk through this journey in a way that it's not my decision, right? And as a Christian coach, this I think is that difference is I'm in a partnership with my client and the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit knows where to bring this client. They know the change, they know the call on this person's life. That's not up to me. And I'm not here to interrupt any of that work. I am here to just facilitate that growth process, to help them think about their thinking, help them interrupt the thinking patterns, the things, the old rules, right? You're not good enough.
mhm.
You can't do it that way. That's stupid. What's wrong with you? All of these beliefs and these things that we've heard on replay, they show up and we might not know they're showing up. They're under in that subconscious, right? And if you
Right.
listen as a coach, you're going to hear little glimpses of those things that are getting in the way. So that's my job as a coach, not to fix it for anyone, right? I don't know what they have to go through, but I'm going to sit here and I'm going to be with you and I'm going to support that process through. But in no way do we fix as a coach. Yeah.
Love that. And I love that perspective of the Holy Spirit sort of holds your ego in check, right? I
Yep.
mean, so how often do we, as we work with coaches, and at times we might fall into a place of, oh, I just need to, I the value of the coaching. What's the value that I'm bringing? And when we're able to say, but my role in this is to sort of let this person, let whatever our belief system is, do their magic as well. Do their show up however they're going to show up. And so I love that perspective of it's not about me. It's not about me as the coach.
Yeah. Well, and in coaching, it's really about where the client is now and where they say they want to be. And in Christian coaching, it's where the client says they are now and where God wants them to be. Right. So I'm holding that space for my client to get clear on where am I being called to go? What am I being called to do? And it could be anything, right? I have no idea what the call on their life is. They do, but sometimes with all the chatter and the busyness, and even just with ADHD, a lot of our symptoms can really impact and impair our ability to stay connected in our spiritual disciplines, right?
Mhm.
Like the way that we, as people with ADHD, might interact with God's word might be different than a neurotypical brain, where they can sit and open the Bible and just read and stay engaged. Whereas me, I'm like, no, I need to hear this. I need to interact with this in a different way because this isn't
Mhm.
working. Right. And that's okay. Right. Our
Right.
spiritual walk and our journey with ADHD and our faith doesn't have to look like someone else's. And so often we're comparing ourselves to, well, this family does it this way. Why, like, I want to do it that way. And it's like, well, what if you could do the same thing and get there a different way? And that for some people is just mind blowing.
That brings up for me this whole concept of what I, saw repeatedly as a therapist, what I see also as a coach, is that through life, we create coping mechanisms. We create ways to achieve or to get by. I mean, sometimes or survive. And those coping mechanisms work until they don't. They get us through certain things. And I could imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, that as an ADHD coach, you're gonna be learning about people's coping mechanisms and when they're no longer working anymore. And that might be part of the journey that you're having with them. What are your thoughts about that?
Oh, absolutely. Right. I think people with ADHD are absolutely brilliant, Meg. It's like
Mhm.
we know we need to get this thing done. And naturally, we're figuring out ways to get this done. And it's interesting because this is why in coaching, when I'm teaching coaching, we think about body doubling or some of the common strategies for people with ADHD. And I share with the coaches in training, we don't have to use that language. Our clients are creating these things for themselves without the name on it. It doesn't matter what it's called. They're doing it. Right. And we can call light to that and point out that in service of our client. But we don't necessarily need to put all of that language on there. There was also something that you had mentioned. I don't know why it made me think of this, but as an ADHD and Christian life coach myself, one of the things that I also am very passionate about is creating systems and things that work for us as a coach, right? Because I have executive function challenges. I also have dyslexia, right? That creates a whole other realm of challenges, right? So, you know, we're also supporting our clients, but to be the best coaches that we can be, we might have to do things a little different on our end, right? I
Oh,
can think
good.
of, I have different forms. I have a whole little organization system over here, Meg. But I have different forms that I have created as a support for myself in my coaching practice that I share with our coaches in training. I want that for them, right? I want them to see this is what a lot of coaches are doing. And then it's okay if we do it this way. And we create different ways to have workarounds for our executive function, right? And my brain always surprises me, right? Like I don't think I'm going to remember stuff. And I have these systems. And of course, I remember it anyway, but it helps my anxiety. It helps me relax
Right.
because if I don't remember, it's okay. I have my little systems set up. And over the years, I've developed those systems and I've changed them and I've modified them. And I love being able to just share that with other coaches because I remember when I started coaching and I remember looking at coaches that didn't have ADHD and I'm like, how did they do that thing? Right? How do they organize all that? Because we are not just coaches, we are entrepreneurs. Right.
Mhm.
And that was a little smack in the face when I went through the training. I'm like, I want to help people. I want to coach people. And then I'm like, wait a minute, I got to run a business as well. So it's really important. And I'm very passionate about helping coaches also how do we run a business? How do we set this up the way our brain works, right? Leaning into it's interesting because it's exactly how we support our clients, right? And then that we're going to offer that same grace and intentionality in building our practice as well.
So based upon what you just said, I'm hearing, and once again, correct me if I'm wrong, that many of the coaches that are drawn to attention deficit coaching have attention deficit. Is that what I mean? So based upon just the way that you were just talking about that, that's what struck me. So how
Yeah.
on target am I? Yeah.
Very, very much so. I would say, so we have small class sizes. We limit it to 15. And I would say probably about 13 to 14 in each class have ADHD. And then we'll have one or two participants each class that are really, they have someone they love that
Mhm.
has ADHD. So a kiddo, a spouse, maybe we have a lot of teachers and special education teachers. So they're working with a population of kiddos or college students that are really impacted by ADHD. So it's so interesting because I don't think it impacts how they can coach people with ADHD because they still have that empathy, that compassion, that
Mhm.
understanding that we show up with as a coach. That is the piece that sets us apart is when you work with someone, an ADHD life coach, you are partnering with someone that is showing up with a lens of ADHD, right? I talked about that biblical lens that was really important to me. And as an ADHD life coach, we're showing up with that. So it informs our curiosity. It informs how we ask questions, right? Because we understand it's not about just doing it, or they're not doing it because it's not important. We understand how the ADHD brain works, what is happening, what the common symptoms are. But then there's that piece of, we also know everyone with ADHD is unique. So we're asking these curious questions to bring light what their experience is so that they can figure out, hey, this is the thing that's getting in my way. And then we support our clients. What do you want to do about that, right? How do you find those resources? How and as a coach, we can provide some of that. I typically do that in between the sessions, right? I really want them to have that autonomy and that accountability. But yeah, really partnering in that way, I think is important.
I love that. So we were talking about we've spent a lot of time talking about the client partnership, which is beautiful, and I love your insights and your awareness of that. Let's shift for just a minute to that other element that you brought up, which is we're business owners, we're entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
So what does Heidi do to get word out to the world what you do and attract people to you?
Yeah. I think that's the most common question I get asked is how do we get clients? Where do we go? What do we do? And I think number one, get confident in who you are and what you're doing. I know I went through this myself, and I know a lot of coaches go through that process of having that imposter syndrome, right? It's like, have I really learned enough to do this thing and to help people? Like we start doubting ourselves, and people can hear that, right? One
And
of the things
feel it. There's an
they
energy to that. Yeah.
there is. One of my kids always tell me, "Mom, please just don't talk about ADHD." Everywhere I go, Meg, it doesn't matter. And it's not always me. It just happens. But when you have that opportunity, grocery store, movie theater, airplane, the circus, wherever you are, someone it happens, right? Like, oh, what do you do? And we have that opportunity to say who we are and what we do, have something prepared. And I'm more organic with it. But when I started, what is my kind of 30-second like blurb about what I
Mhm.
do? And then based on their reaction, again, using our coaching skills, right? Meeting them where they are, then have prepared a little bit more of a blurb that you can share. Every time I tell people what I do, their face just lights up with curiosity because ADHD doesn't discriminate. 1 in 10 people have ADHD, right? I have not met one person that isn't like, oh, my kid has ADHD, my sister, my brother, my husband, someone is impacted by ADHD. And it is unfortunately not a service that a lot of people know about yet. So taking that opportunity, word of mouth, right? Telling people who you are, what you do. And I think for me, it's never been about selling something, although I did used to work in sales and I was good at it. But it's not about selling something, it's about the opportunity to share what lights us up, what we are passionate about, how we support people in this journey of life that we're all taking. Another piece I think that's important is, and it's a courageous step, is figuring out who those people are that light you up, right? Because this work, we're doing this every day, right? We want to be
Mhm.
partnering with people that really do energize us and light us up and excite us. So being a coach, a generalist coach is okay, right? But I think that as you're coaching people, pay attention. Who is it that really like just sets me on fire, that like excites me, and I get energized and I love it, right? That might be an indication of those might be your people, right?
Right.
I remember when I started training, I was like, I'm working with kids. That's what I said, Meg. I'm like, I got two boys. I'm working with kids. And I went through the training program and I was like, I coached a few kids and I'm like, I'm not working with kids.
Yeah.
I don't want to work with kids anymore. Yeah. So
That is so key for regardless of where you are in your coaching journey, who your population is, you've got to coach them to see, and then you'll find your sweet spot. So to Heidi's point, it might be something completely different than what you thought, but you'll get the results and make the transformation with the people who your synergy is like spot on with them.
yeah.
And you're not going to know that unless you get out there and you practice and you work with lots of different kinds of people. The other thing that I just want to highlight here is when you're out talking about what you do, yes, I'm sure you're bumping into everybody knows somebody who is, but I promise you, it is your energy, your excitement about what you do that is magnetic for people. And so I want all of you to see Heidi as an example of knowing, just knowing down to her toes what it is that she does, what she loves about what she does, and being able to talk about it in a way that is not, let me just talk about me, but it's like, let me share about what lights me up because you asked in a very concise, bite-sized, enthusiastic way. And then when people want to know more, she can tell them more, but she's not sitting them down for a 2-hour talk when they say, what do you do? And it's her enthusiasm and her vibrancy and her just it exudes from you. And that is magnetic.
Thank you. I so appreciate that. And and I want to also just encourage anyone who's listening thinking, I don't know who those people are yet. You will get there, right? It took me time to figure all of this out. We're learning so much as a new coach, right? It's like learning a whole new language on how to
Hmm.
partner in this way. And for me, I'm a verbal processor. Like one of the biggest feedback I get from my coaching is how I hold so much space. Tell my family that and they'd be like, absolutely not. I am a chatterbox. I love talking, but there's just something different that ignites in me when I'm holding this space for someone because it's not about me. I get to give them that space for them so that they can shine and that they can have their moment. And for people with ADHD, that takes practice for us, right?
Hmm.
I think of even when someone says, what do you do? We have to hold back, right? All the things. I often will take a deep breath and I'm like, well, and I'll tell them what I do. And if they ask me more, like, well, what do you want to know? Because I could info dump for 20 minutes straight, right? But it's using those coaching skills and meeting people like, hey, what do you want to know? Right? Like what
Hmm.
excites you? I seen your face light up. What excites you about the work that I do? What can I share with you? So it really is being able to I won't say read the room, right? Knowing,
Yeah.
right? And meeting someone where they are. Yeah.
Love that. Heidi, I applaud you for the work that you do, not only in how you're meeting your clients where they're at, giving them their space and helping them grow through that experience, but that you have that ripple effect of helping other coaches learn, grow, and show up in the world so that coaching can take its place in helping all of us listen more deeply, connect more effectively, be with one another in a healthier way. So, thank you so much for coming on the show. If people want to know more about you and the work you do, how would they connect with you?
Yeah, super easy. So it's just lifecoachheidi.com. And if you come to my website, I am known for creating gifts. So I have lots of free goodies on my website. I also am sharing a workbook called Unlock Success. So it will help you, the listeners here today, to actually start narrowing down their niche and just some reflective questions so that you can start that journey for yourselves as well.
So good. Those links to connect with Heidi will be below this video if you're watching us on YouTube, or in the show notes if you're listening on the many platforms that the Star Coach Show is on. Heidi, thank you so much for joining us. And I want to thank all of you for joining us. Remember that the Star Coach Show comes to you each and every week, bringing strategies, tools, and resources for coaches. If you like what we're offering, be sure to subscribe wherever you listen and leave a comment. Let Heidi know what you thought about what she shared. And that's how we as coaches kind of know whether we're having an impact and just what you might need to know more about. So until next week, this is Meg Rentschler wishing you the very best for your success. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others. We're all here doing it together. So let's do the lifting together. Take care.